I am Dr. Pavitra Bharadwaj. I am Associate Professor in the Department of Computer Science, Jesus and Mary College, University of Delhi. So friends, we were talking about JavaScript in the previous lecture of this series, and we had seen that JavaScript provides a very robust environment for interactive web pages, for customizable web pages, and for web pages which can provide for validation of fields on the web forms that the user is interacting with. So in this series, in this particular set of lecture, we are going to talk more about how JavaScript events can be created and what are the different types of programming constructs that JavaScript provides us for creating, adding more dynamism to our web pages. So in case of, we were talking about events in JavaScript. So what is an event? Basically an event is any action which is occurring on the page due to the interaction of the user. Say for example, when the user types in something in a text box, that is an event. When a user presses a button, that is an event. So events basically are the main feature of JavaScript, and they are very important when validation of fields and dynamic changes of the page, of the contents of the page are to be made. For example, if you want to check whether a particular field is blank, left blank by the user, so then you will use event driven programming and you will choose a particular event that will occur, and when that event occurs you will call for a function. So that function will perform a particular task. So on an event you define what action will be taken, that is when the user will click a button, what action should be taken. When the user rolls the mouse over an image, what action should be taken. Should the image be zoomed out, should the image be zoomed in, what kind of change should happen. So therefore event driven programming is very crucial for JavaScript. So we will be talking more about how event driven programming can be done when we will see a few practical examples of how JavaScript programs are written and how they can add such kind of interactivity to the web page. Besides this, because we are saying that JavaScript provides certain features of programming language, so one of the very important feature of a programming language is the use of variables. Now for those students who have not done any kind of programming language before or who have no experience in programming, it is important to understand the concept of a variable. So a variable is actually a name which is associated with a piece of data. So variable is actually a location in the memory of the computer which is identified by a name and which holds certain value. So actually what we are doing, if we say that I create a variable, say the variable is name is equal to, and you say CEC. So what are we doing? We are reserving a place in the computer's memory and we are identifying that space, or we are sort of addressing that space with a name, and in that we are holding some content, we are storing some kind of data. So variables, they will allow us to store the data in the program and to manipulate the data. So JavaScript allows the creation of many variables, and these variables will store the data temporarily, right. So like whatever the content may be, say for example if you want to store text data, or you want to store a date, or you want to store a numeric data, so you have to define a variable and then you can store the data in it. So in JavaScript basically you use the keyword where for creating a variable. So where here is a keyword which will tell that the following is a variable which the user has created. So if you can see in these examples, we are writing where x is equal to 10. So what are we doing? We are creating a variable which we are identifying as with the name x, and in that we are storing the value 10. Likewise we are saying where v color is red, or we are creating another variable called today in which we are storing the date. Now it is also important to note that a variable name has to follow certain rules, that is there are some conventions which are followed for creating variable names. Like a variable name cannot begin with a number. So here we can see a variable name can begin with a special symbol, particularly underscore. And also sometimes we can directly create a variable without writing the keyword where. But it is always advisable that for reading and for later on, it's important that we write the word where, so it becomes easier for the programmer himself or other programmers to identify what all variables have been created. So it is very important to distinguish between the name of the variable and the value of the variable. So when we are writing, say we are giving an expression where V color is equal to red. So what is V color? V color is the name of the variable and red is the value, right. So in other words, we can say that V color is the name of the box, while red is what is inside the box. As I just said, that a variable can be conceived in the form of a container. The container has certain name and there is some content which is put in that container. So here the name of the container is V color and the content in the container is red. That the conventions have to be followed for naming the variables, and JavaScript is definitely case sensitive. That is, uppercase and lowercase letters are treated differently in JavaScript. Variable names cannot contain spaces, they cannot contain punctuations or they cannot start with a number. And of course, you cannot have a reserved word for a variable. Like for example, VAR, we said that it is a keyword. So your variable name cannot be VAR, or we are using say name, or we are using ID. So these are reserved words which you cannot use for variable names. You can use any other combination of numbers, special characters and alphabets, but the variable name always has to start with an alphabet. So in when we are saying that a variable is actually a container, and in the container you can put any type of data. So the primitive types of data, or the conventional types of data are the numbers, which is numeric data, the strings, which are textual data, and the boolean data, which is having value as true or false. So you can identify, or you can create a numeric variable, you can create a string or a text variable, and you can create a boolean variable. Then we can also have composite data types, like we can have arrays and we can have object data type. Array means array is a combination, or it is a group of multiple items which are identified using an index value. So that is an array. Then you also have something called the constant, or we have called them literals. So literal means that the value is going to be fixed. So variable is something which is changing. So in the course of a program, the value of the variable can change any number of times. But for example, if you have a program in which you are calculating the area of a circle. So here the area of a circle is pi into radius square. So now the value of radius can change, but the value of pi will remain same. So likewise, you will define pi as a literal, or you will define pi as a constant, that is, the value will not change. The value of the variable will keep on changing. Okay. Then numbers, of course, we have discussed that in numeric data type you can give integer data type, or you can give a decimal data type. In strings you can give a sequence of letters, or even numbers which are enclosed in single or double quotes. And then of course you have certain variables which you identify as boolean, like true or false. For example, married or not. So that is a boolean variable which can have only two state, either yes or no, either true or false likewise. Then in JavaScript, basically we identify the different types of variables, like we are saying that variable can be a number, it can be a string, it can be a date, but actually it is untyped. That is, we do not have to give explicit data type. Like in other programming languages like C, C++, etc., when you create a variable, you have to give the type of the variable also, that what type of data the variable is going to store. But in JavaScript we do not do that, we simply assign the value, and JavaScript in a way, it is implicitly typecasted. Typecasted means that after looking at the value the variable is having, JavaScript will assign the type to the variable. So here there is no way that we specify a particular variable represents an integer or a string or a real number. The same variable can have different data types in this different context. So the same variable can be used for storing string or number or even date within the same program. So we say that it does not have explicit data types, it has got implicit data type. This is called implicit data type. So if we have an expression which combines two numbers, then it will evaluate to a number, and if we have an expression which combines a string and a number, then it will evaluate to a string. So this way in JavaScript it does not give an error also, that if you are trying to add a string to a number, in other languages it may result in an error, that is data type mismatch, but in JavaScript it will treat the number as a string because there is no explicit data typing. So for example, if we look at some variables here, we have defined some variables, say variable x is equal to 4, y is 11, z is cat, q is 17, and we say x plus y, so the answer comes to 15. If we say z plus x, now the value in z is cat and the value in x is 4, which is a number. So here when you are performing the operation z plus x, it is giving you the result by appending the number to the text, and now this cat 4 whole thing has become a string. Although x was a number, z was a string, but when you combine these two, it gives you a result as a string. And the last variable where you see q is equal to 17, so here the 17 number is actually written in double quotes. So we said that when a number is written in double quote, it behaves like a string. So this 17 is actually behaving like a string, and when you are saying x plus q, so your answer is not coming as 21, but it is coming as 417, because this 17 is not 17, but it is being treated as a text, it is being treated as a string. So the answer also is coming out to be string. So this is an example of how explicit data types are used in case of JavaScript. So automatically it will take the value, looking at the value, it will create the type of the variable. So these are some primitive data types that we have used, like a number or a string, but we also have some composite data type, right? So primitive data type, they will hold the actual value of the data, but variables for composite type will hold only reference to the value of the composite type. Reference to the value means it will only hold a pointer, or it will only hold a location of the address where the variable is creating, where the variable is actually starting. For example, if you want to store the marks of 10 students, so instead of creating 10 different variables of marks, you create one composite variable like an array variable of marks, in which you can identify the marks of 10 students by using the index. So therefore in the composite data types, it is not the value, but it is the location, or it is an index which is being stored. Then of course we have discussed about variables, we have discussed about literals, and we have discussed about the types of variables. Now the next thing which comes is the statements in JavaScript. So statement is actually a section of the JavaScript which is evaluated by a web browser. So what is a script? A script is nothing but a collection of statements. So you can write multiple statements, and these statements will be executed and implemented by the browser. Say for example, we are writing a statement, last name is equal to John. This is one statement. X is equal to 120. This is another statement. You write y is equal to x plus x. This is another statement. So the statements is nothing but it is actually a command which you are giving to the browser to execute. And what is script? Script is a collection of different commands. So it's always a good idea that we always put a semicolon after the statement is completed. So when you want to denote the completion of a statement, then you put a statement terminator, that is a semicolon. But JavaScript does not give this as an error. If you don't put a semicolon, that is also okay. JavaScript will not give an error, but this is recommended that the user puts it. And also there are particular ways in which statements have to be written. That is, you can write statements separated by semicolon, or you can write them in the next line, but you cannot write incomplete statements in 2 lines. Like in the last example, you can see in one line we are writing A is equal to, in the next line we are writing 3 semicolon. So this is going to give an error, but the first 2 examples, they are acceptable, they are fine. And the first example is the recommended way of writing, because that is actually going to make your program more readable. It is going to enhance the readability of your program. So when you want to create statements, definitely you need certain operators which you will apply to the operands in order to do the calculation, or in order to perform some kind of mathematical or logical function. So different operators are there in JavaScript. Of course, you have the basic mathematical operators, that is addition, subtraction, multiplication and division. Then you have the modulus operator. Again, those who are new to programming would know that modulus operator will give the remainder of the term. So if you write 5 modulus 2, so it will divide 5 by 2 and return the remainder. So 5% 2 or 5 modulo 2 will give an answer of 1. Then you have the increment operator, you have the decrement operator. Decrement and increment means that if you write x is equal to 5 and x plus plus, so it will increase the value of x by 1. So it becomes x plus 1. And decrement means x minus minus means the value of x will be reduced by 1. X minus minus means x minus 1. Then we have the equality sign, that is, if you want to check whether 2 values are equal or not. Then you have inequality, when you want to check 2 values are not equal or not. Then you have the logical not operator, for which you use an exclamation sign. So this is used for reversing, that is for Boolean variables where you have not true or not false you want to put. Then you have the logical AND operator, where you want to check for 2 conditions together, then you will use the logical AND operator. For example, where A is greater than 100 and A is less than 300, likewise. Or you have a logical OR operator, where either of the conditions you want to check, that either the candidate is a male candidate or the age is above 25. So that can be a logical OR operator. And then there is a very important operator which we use here, which is called the conditional selection operator. So this we will discuss in detail, that how you can use this operator for providing multiple conditions within the same statement. This is a unique operator by JavaScript. So aggregate assignments, they will provide a shortcut by combining the assignment operator with some other operator. So assignment operator is equal to operator, and aggregate assignment means that you use the operator plus and equals to. So if you want to have an expression like x is equal to x plus 7, so instead of this we can also write x is equal to x plus is equal to 7. So this means x plus is equal to 7 means that we are saying x is equal to x plus 7. So this makes it more compact, this makes the statements more shorter. So we can write, then we have the increment and the decrement operator. Now in increment and decrement it can have 2 forms basically. One is the prefix form and the other is the postfix forms. So the result of the 2 is definitely different. So if you have a value x is equal to 10 and you have another value, you want to assign another value and you say y is equal to plus plus x, and then you print the value of x. So now what will happen, that y will have the value 11, but x will have the value of 10. Then if you do x plus plus, that is z is equal to x plus plus, then the value of x will be 11. So what is happening, that in this case the value is being assigned before incrementing, in the other case the value is being assigned after incrementing, but the final value of the variable x will remain the same, that is it will remain 11, it will be incremented in both the cases, because in both cases you are increasing the value of x by 1. Plus plus x means you are saying x is equal to x plus 1, right. So the post increment and pre increment, or postfix and prefix, need to be understood very clearly when we are trying to write the increment or the decrement operators. So now we come to a very important section of the programming in JavaScript, and that is known as the control structures. When we say control structures, we actually mean the statements through which we can control the flow of execution of a program, that is how which statement is going to be executed after which statement. So these are called control flow statements. In this we have got the condition statements, that is the if statement, then we have the loop or the iterative statements, that is the while loop and the for loop. So basically every control structure, it will manipulate a block of JavaScript expressions, and it begins with a opening curly braces and it will end with an closing curly braces. So whatever is defined within the opening and the closing curly braces will become the main block of the control flow statement. So the first control flow statement that we do is the if statement. Now the if statement, of course it is for the conditions that we use. So we create an if statement, or we use an if statement for making a decision, that is a programmer has to choose a decision, that is if one particular value is true, what course of action needs to be followed, if that value is false, then what course of action needs to be followed. So we use the if statement whenever we need to create a fork in the program, that is we have got two options based on the value of a particular variable or based on a particular event. So if the syntax of the if statement is shown here, so you write if and in parenthesis you give the condition and then you give the block of statements that you need to execute if the condition is true, and in the else part again you give a block of statements which is defined within the opening and the closing curly braces, which you will give if the condition is false. So if x is equal to 10, so depending upon the value of 10x, you will either do y is equal to x into x, or you will set the value of x to 0. So either y is equal to x into x will be executed, or x is equal to 0 will be executed depending upon the value. It's also important to note that these curly braces, sometimes when there is only one statement which is following the condition, then we see that the curly brace is avoided, but it is always recommended to make the program more readable that the curly braces are put, their curly braces are not removed even if there is a single statement in the program. So then one is the conditional statement, that is when you have a fork in the program. Then there are also situations where you want the same group of statement to be executed repeatedly until a condition is met. So these are known as loops or repeat loops. So they are very powerful programming tools and they allow more efficient design, and because when you are working especially with composite data types like the arrays. So what you want is that you want the same operation to be performed n number of times. Of course you want to define the number of times that execution has to be performed, but when the execution when that number is reached, then the execution should stop. So in iterative statements we have two types of iterative statement. One is the while loop, that is in the while loop you specify a condition and then inside the condition you give the statements which you want to execute. So, in this example you can see that we have created a variable and we have initialized it using we initialize it at 0, and then we say that till the time count is less than or equal to 10, we want to go on printing the value of count. So, we are saying document.write count and then we say count plus plus. So, every time the loop is executed, the value of count is increased by 1. So, now what will happen, that when you execute the value, so initially it is 0, the condition is true, so count will be printed, the value of count will be printed on the screen because you are using document.write. Then the value of count will become 1 because from 0 it will increase, it will go back to the while condition, check 1 is less than 10, it will again print it and now the value will become 2. Likewise, the value will go on increasing and finally the value will become 11, then the condition will become false because 11 is neither less than nor equal to 10. So, then the control will come outside the loop and the statement which is outside of the loop will be printed. So, this is about the while loop and how you can use the while loop for repeatedly executing the same instructions, same statements again and again till the particular condition is true. So, we will be continuing with our discussion on iterative statements and other interesting statements in JavaScript. Till then, please keep watching CEC. Thank you.